I'm going to call to order tonight's meeting of the Hudson Board of Education. It's Tuesday, January 10th. Please rise if you're able and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members, you have printed agendas in front of you that do reflect one amendment to the agenda. That is in Section 9D under the Employee Handbook Provisions. We will not be reviewing the discipline section. That will revisit at our March board meeting. So if there's someone who, February. It is only January. So if someone would be willing to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Motion by Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Sandy, we have a light recognition section this evening.
Well, I can tell you for certain that we have consistency in our high school annual, and that is or yearbook, I should probably refer to it, and that is consistency of high quality. Once again, our yearbook has received both national and regional recognition, and with us this evening we have our teachers staff that are working with the yearbook, and that's Deb Lee, if you will come on up, and Steve Kennedy. And then we have our editor this year, Brooke Brokaw, who will be coming up with some of the other staff members and describing some of the various awards that they have received most recently. All right, come on up, ladies.
Hello. My name is Brooke Brokaw, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the yearbook this year. If you can see when you get a book that's our book from last year. And one of the judges from the yearbook judging panel said, "The inside cover is phenomenal, simple as that. I immediately get the gimmick or tagline of the book, which is honestly the most important thing to get a feel for before diving in. At the same time, it operates as a simple index and teases at the images and people contained therein. It sets a design standard and gets readers excited to turn the page." And that was from Trevor Kupfer from Volume 1 magazine. So he gave us excellent work and a first place. So how we bring the school and community together through the yearbook. As the yearbook staff, we would like to think that we are not only bringing the school together, but also the community, with a sense of Raider pride and unity. We would also like to thank the school board for their continued support and our advisors, Mrs. Lee and Mr. Kennedy, for their countless hours that they put in and for always creating a positive attitude and fun workspace. Without them, the yearbook would not be possible.
All right, I'm Shauna Green. I'm a staff member, and I also create the QR codes for our new yearbook. This is the National Press Association's, it says in recognition of Merit Awards, True Blue Annual 2011, Hudson High School, the honor rating of All-American with 4 marks of distinction in the NSPA Publication Critique Service.
Hi, I'm Michaela Lodge, and I'm the business manager this year. Currently, there are 2 yearbook classes with about 30 students in each class, and students spend a lot of time in class working just on the yearbook, and they also come in during academic advisory time and during after-school time and their personal time to help work on the yearbook to make it look good. And we have been put on several posters and other stuff for the Jostens yearbook, and this is actually one of them down here from our staff that's this year and last year. So, yeah.
And those posters and books that actually several publishing companies have put out are distributed throughout the United States.
I'm Miranda Fawn, and I'm the underclassmen editor, and I do like the people pages and the stories on the bottom of the people pages. And in this this one is the general excellence contest and critiques and stuff. And Trevor Kupfer from Volume 1 magazine said, "Yours is my favorite yearbook overall. The concept theme is clear in nearly every spread and throughout the whole book and is nothing short of impressive." And then this one is from the Columbia Scholastic Press Association, and it's gold medalist certificate. And last year's theme for our book, which is that, and then this, the one you guys are looking at, it's the theme was called "Don't Blink," and this book won multiple awards. The theme was based on how fast things can change in the blink of an eye.
I'm Maddie Spohn, and oh my gosh, I lost my thought. But I create pages. And this year's theme is called "You Are One Too." It captures a sense of the school's pride in bringing together all of the grades as one.
I'm Bridget Donahue, and I'm a yearbook staff member, and I also do an independent study. So this is just an example of some of the critique that they had for our yearbook. And they said, "I would have made your peers say text bigger. That's about all I can say for this simple yet effective infographic. Normally, I'd press about how you got this data, but it's light and simple, and it doesn't matter much." Another publication would say, or would list off by the numbers of this data, or maybe even a bullet list, but this is a creative way to visualize a simple survey.
I'm Caitlin Smith, and I am the senior editor, and I take care of all of the senior photos that are submitted, and I correct pages and other stuff. And this award is for first place award for this story. And the judges' critique was, "This is a straightforward summary story, and while some can come off vague and boring, this one works quite well. You did the right thing in focusing on making state and didn't bog it down with cheese or cliches. You put quotes in the right place and ran through the facts in the order a reader would wonder them. Judging simply by this, you could crank out an excellent newsy sports story like nobody's business."
So thank you again for your continued support, and thanks again to Mr. Kendi and Mrs. Lee. We really wouldn't be able to do it without them. I can't tell you how much time they spend and don't expect anything back, so we really wouldn't be able to do it without them. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I'm stepping out of turn by saying the board members are thrilled to have gotten yearbooks. It's been a long time for some of us. Thank you very much. All right, we are on the superintendent's report section of the agenda, so I will turn it over to Mary.
Board members, good evening. I'd like to announce that we had quite a bit of interest in our upcoming board election. We have 3 seats that will be open in the April general election. We had 7 candidates who filed their candidacy, and as a result of that, there will be a primary on February 21st. And one of those 7 candidates will be eliminated. So the top 6 vote getters will be on the general election on April 3rd. The order of the ballot, the primary ballot, will be Sandy Gerke, followed by Liz Bruck, John A. Burtis, Kathy Leaf, Tom Holland, Barb Van Lunen, and Brian P. Bell. So we certainly thank each one of those, our incumbents as well, for their continued interest in serving the Hudson School District, and those people who have also added their names to this ballot. And then, unless there's any questions, I'll just keep moving. All right, I'd like to just announce the open enrollment window for those individuals or parents who are interested in applying for their children to attend a school district other than the one that they live in. And we have both students who are interested in coming into the Hudson School District and also Hudson School District resident students who are interested in attending another school outside the school district. And the board takes action on that. We would anticipate that at the March meeting. The window this year is February 6th through 24, and that is the only time at the present time people can register to be considered for open enrollment. Open enrollment can be considered or is considered basically twice in a student's time period through the Hudson School District, once basically in elementary and then again going into middle school. So again, the window is February 6th through 24. I can't emphasize that enough because we often have parents who contact us after that window, and they do have to wait to the following year. So open enrollment window, February 6th through 24. There is legislation currently that is being considered in Madison to extend that window, but at the present time, it is only February 6th through the 24th. Unless there are any questions, that would be the end of my report.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Moving on to the reports section of the agenda, the first item is the 2010-11 independent financial audit. Tim.
Okay, I'm going to have Steve Tracy from Larson Allen come forward. Steve's going to give you a very brief overview of the 2010-2011 financial audit. All board members have received the full report, and the Finance Committee had an opportunity to go into the report in depth. And so we're going to have Steve, as a partner with Larson Allen, give you some highlights of the audit. So Steve, I'll let you take it away, and you can put your button up on the mic if it isn't. Oh, go up with it one more time. I'm sorry, I had you turn it off. Thank you.
Okay.
And you'll want to pull that real close, Steve.
All right. Thank you. Okay, well, I'm here to just very briefly give a summary of the audit. Tom Cordes on our staff met with the Finance Committee last Tuesday and went over in detail the financial statements and the notes and so on. And so the purpose for me here tonight is just to give a quick synopsis. So, and I realize the time is of the essence. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be the auditors for the Hudson School District. We appreciate that. And I want to thank Tim and his staff for tremendous cooperation throughout the course of the audit. It always makes it go so much easier that way. We issued our opinion on the financial statements. It's an unqualified opinion. It's a clean opinion, and it's the highest or the best opinion that we can give you on your financial statements. Essentially, it means that the financial statements are correct in all material respects, fairly stated in all material respects, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles for governmental entities. We had no material audit adjustments during the course of the audit, and of course that was not then one of the findings. Nothing came to our attention during the audit that there was any non-compliance with any laws, regulations, contracts, grant agreements, or anything that would have a material effect on the financial statements. And the only finding that we had in terms of internal control was the fact that we, as the audit firm, prepared the financial report, the financial statements, and the notes and the disclosures. That is not anything unusual in nature. We do that for virtually every one of our clients. It's an expected service. It's something that we've always done. Our industry, our profession has recently stated that due to those being your financial statements and not ours, if we prepare them for the client, we need to disclose that fact. And so that is the only finding of that nature in the report. But again, it's not unusual at all. I'm not going to go over any of the numbers. Again, I stated that there was no material audit adjustments, which means that the numbers that are presented in the audit report are substantially the same as what's coming out of your financial accounting records and the reports that are coming to you from Tim's office. But if there's any questions at all whatsoever on the financial statements, that's
goes beyond what Tom had presented last week, by all means, contact us or go through Tim or whatever you need to do to contact us. So again, that's really a quick summary of the audit report. Things were in very good condition. We had very good cooperation, and it made everything go quite smoothly.
Are there questions from the board? Steve, I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
On the one finding that you described, which is the fact that you as the audit firm prepared the financial statements, that not being an uncommon thing. In the clients where you do that, is there a primary reason why the auditors are called on to prepare the financial statements?
Well, I think efficiency, number one. I think that we have the audit program, the audit system built in so that when we download your records and load them in, we can push out the financial statements. We have the expertise to know what are the required disclosures to comply with the generally accepted accounting principles. So, I think unless that you have, we have virtually no clients that actually prepare the financial statements.
Is it oftentimes a function of the size of the finance organization?
Oh, very much so. Very much so.
Okay.
And it also has to do a lot of times, and not in this respect, but a lot of times there's sometimes substantial adjustments that need to be made during the audit to bring those financial records up to a point to produce the financial statements.
But that was not the issue here.
That is not the issue here.
The second question I have is, are there upcoming accounting pronouncements that could have a material impact on how we present our financial information here in Hudson?
Well, I hope not. We had a major one this last year with GASB 54, which changed the nature of the presentation of the fund balance. A lot of the terminology changed. We no longer call it undesignated. It's now unassigned. It's no longer reserved. There's restricted and other categories. And that was kind of to maybe clean up some of the definitions and make them consistent between governmental funds and proprietary funds. And along with that, kind of refine some of the definitions of the funds themselves. Now, for example, in your GAAP statements, the special education fund actually rolls into the general fund. It really doesn't meet the qualification of a special revenue fund, even though DPI wants it kept separately. So that was a major change this year. I don't anticipate anything in the near future, but that's not to say something will not be coming down.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Tim, back to you. Is that it?
That would be it, and I just want to thank my staff as well. They worked tremendously hard during audit time, and we really appreciate that. And owe them some gratitude for all that work that they do. So.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. And then Tim, land purchase is the next report on the agenda. St. Croix Meadows update.
Sure, I'm going to give just a brief oral update. We continue to work through the contingencies and the due diligence in the purchase agreement. We are in the process of having the Alta survey completed. We expect that to be completed by the middle of this month, so coming up soon. The zoning application for rezoning has been submitted to the city by the owners, and we did receive our Phase 1 environmental report back, and that's good news. We don't have any recognized environmental conditions on the site. So we continue to move along towards finalizing all of the documents needed and satisfying the requirements of the purchase agreement.
Are there questions for Tim on that topic? All right, hearing none. Mary, you're going to take the next report, which is the St. Croix County land availability.
We have been approached by County Administrator Pat Thompson about our possible interest in 63 acres around the government center and the county jail. And I believe there's a map up behind me. And as you can see, just identification at the bottom of the page, or the visual in front of us, is Vine Street. And you see 31 acres on Vine. And then if you go up on the far side of the map is Carmichael. And you can just pass the 31 acres, you see 18 acres, and that's the government center and the county jail. So the county administrator has approached us about questioning our interest in possibly purchasing the property that includes 3 parcels, the 13 acres behind the government center, then the 19 acres adjacent to that, and the 31 acres making 63 acres. The county is also pursuing other entities who may be interested in this property. So as you remember, board members, earlier in our search for property within the city, we considered this property based on the board's criteria and determined that the St. Croix Meadows site, that property was a better match for the board's criteria. So we wanted to go through and compare this parcel with the criteria that the board, the primary criteria that the board has established. We need to respond to the county about whether we have interest in this property as a future school site, and we just need your guidance this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim to talk more about this piece of property.
And I realize that we have to go back to 6B after this because I skipped over something rather important. But I'll continue to finish item 6C. When we look at the St. Croix County site, the primary criteria that the board had set in reviewing and choosing land sites, possible land sites, were to look at sites that had sewer and water availability, so that they would be, all of those sites would be located within the city limits. We also set a criteria for accessibility, meaning that the site could be accessible from different locations and wouldn't cause traffic concerns or a minimal of traffic concerns. Another criteria was the size of the parcel must meet the needs for future growth, and that minimum was set at 65 usable acres. So even if you had a site, say that was larger than that, it had to have at least 65 usable acres to accommodate all of the things that would need to be factored in for a secondary site of 2,000 students. The next criteria was a reasonable cost based on market. And so if we go through, we know that the St. Croix County site has sewer and water availability. The accessibility would be a challenge. The one good thing is it's centrally located within the district. It would be a location of significant, it is a location of significant traffic congestion. We've got certainly traffic lined up at arrival and dismissal times for the high school, and we already have 3 schools, Hudson Prairie, the middle school, and the high school within 1 mile of that site. And that's over 3,400 students, K-12. Since we would use all 3 schools, use of this land would add a 4th school with a population of all 4 projected to grow beyond 4,000 students. So you'd be taking, we're at roughly 5,500 students now. That would be 4,000 students. So almost, a very large percentage of the district students would be concentrated in that small area. A traffic study would certainly need to determine how to solve the current and the projected traffic problems. It's anticipated that the roadway would need to be widened, possible turn lanes, et cetera. And those are all things that are development costs to the district, and the district would have to fund those items. Looking at the size of the parcel, it's 63 acres in total, and the criteria set forth was 65 acres. There are some wetlands on the site that take up a little bit of acreage, so that again reduces the 63 down. Drainage for surrounding properties would have to be addressed, and we don't know at this point how much acreage that would take up of the site. And then solving the traffic congestion issues would again chip away at the total acreage usable for the site. There are some slopes. There's about approximately a 40 to 45 foot elevation change on the site, and those would have to be addressed so that you get maximum site usage, because you're on the low end, starting at the top, but you're on the low end of acreage there. And we don't know also, there may be restrictions for environmental corridors that would be required by either the city or the county. And so when you get down to it, the site is below the 65 usable acres. Reasonable cost based on the market. At this point, the county hasn't determined what the asking price of the property is. They would plan to have an appraisal done if the board were interested in the property. If you compare the site to St. Croix Meadows, St. Croix Meadows, that property is approximately $1.50 per square foot in cost. And we've got the value of the infrastructure on that site, and you're going to see that tonight in the presentation, updated valuation of the building and the infrastructure in place. And you're going to see there's quite a sizable cost savings, potential cost savings there for that site. So in the end, the administration is recommending that we do not pursue the St. Croix County site due to the fact that it does not meet the primary criteria set forth by the board. And I'll let Tom Holland speak about Facilities and Grounds Committee recommendation.
I just want to report that the Facilities and Grounds Committee last night did review this site and had I think some serious discussion about whether we move forward with it, whether we continue to look at it as an option. After, I think, a pretty good deliberation, we decided that it really probably wasn't in the best interest of the district at this point to go through any further costs when we knew already that it really fails to meet two of the criteria at least that we set forth for land acquisition. And so with that, and we appreciate the opportunities to look at these options, but we just feel like at this point in time, I don't think it's worth the taxpayers' money to move forward on a piece of property that we realize that doesn't meet the criteria to begin with. So take any questions or thoughts?
Are there any questions from board members for either Tom or Tim? Dan.
Question for Tim. Does it hurt for us to find out, what they're asking for a price? I mean, that doesn't really cost us anything, does it? And I guess my second question is, as what we did with the golf course analysis, we actually figured out how much of the land was unusable. Do we have any idea, in terms of acreage, how much of it would not be usable either through wetlands or, water reservoirs?
Well, to answer the first question, there is a cost to the county to have that land appraised. So
is that borne by us or by them?
That would be borne by the county. Secondly, if it doesn't meet your criteria, it's already at 63 acres, plus or minus, and we do just cursory review, looking at some wetland space and then addressing traffic improvement. And then any types of elevation, it really brings your usable property down below the 65. So that would be, I guess, where we would recommend that we not pursue that.
And Tim, we would also incur cost if we were having an analysis of the site similar to the one that we did at the Hudson Golf Course.
That's
correct?
right. Yeah, we'd engage a consultant to come in and look. But, again, we're already below that 65-acre criteria.
Are there other questions? All right.
I have
Oh, Brian, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was a little bit late to the draw there. Yeah, personally, I would like to see a price. So, and I would like to do some of the work that we did on the golf course. So I also think, I think we need to consider, we have You know, as we look for the school of the future, you know, how can we better utilize some of the land that we have? I personally like to see, I like to see the price. And I'd like to also do a little bit of the work to see how usable this site is.
Tim, do you recall how much the district spent to have the golf course site evaluated for appropriate usage acres?
It would have been somewhere under, close to, but under 5,000.
Lynn?
Madam President, I'm just curious, and this is mainly directed, I guess, towards Brian's comment. What exactly are you recommending they do for due diligence? Are you talking about looking at the usable square footage when it's already under the criteria we established? Or are you, I mean, what direction are you asking them to go as far as the due diligence on it? Obviously, price, that doesn't take, I mean, that'll take an appraisal on the county board's part, but
What do we do on the golf course?
On a golf course, we did it wasn't in depth, but we looked at really trying to get to how many acres were available there.
I guess I'm recommending what we did for the golf course.
Pat?
Well, the golf course was given to us free. I guess that's why I felt that we probably should do it, and people felt that we should do the evaluation because to prove that it wasn't usable for us. That's why I felt that we did that, and it did cost us $5,000, and it was 65 acres, and in the first place, this isn't even 65 acres, and there is gullies, and there is, so you're not going to get 55 acres or 65 acres. So I don't understand why you cause the county to have to pay for the appraisal, except they're planning to sell it anyway, so I don't know that that will incur them extra money, but we will be using the school sites that are already there. I think I'm correct on that, and so put a fourth one in there. We're going to have a lot of traffic, and we'll have to pay more money. Brian, I don't know.
Tim, could you speak to, you know, when we did the Hudson Golf Course, we were looking at some specific information, particularly the amount of usable acreage. So that's one thing that we could pursue and find out information. But based on our conversations, there's other areas that would be very important for this board to consider in development costs that will take significant time to research, as I understand. Can you talk a little bit more about that specifically?
Well, in this particular site, again, we'd be looking at, you know, if you go further into it, be looking at traffic studies, and those are all things that are going to be stretched out over some time. You'd be looking at doing the more in-depth analysis of just how you could grade out that site to maximize the acreage. You'd have to look at right-of-way easements. You know, so you're looking at several different things that would have to be addressed. You'd have to talk about and enter into discussions with the city. Again, that's something we would need to talk more in depth with the city about as to where they are with the placement of a school there on that site.
So all I'm asking for is a price and the basic what we did at the golf course. I'm not, you know, so I may just be one board member, so that has this view, so.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. I guess, you know, I don't see to what end that would serve Brian. I mean, the site, I guess in my view, you know, the site is too small and going to get smaller. You know, we're not sure exactly what type of wetlands. There's going to be some road widening. I mean, a traffic nightmare. 4 schools within a mile is just you know, mind-boggling. So we really don't want to go here, I don't think. But most important, I think the size of the parcel and the shape of it, the access is just, I think, so poor that I don't see any value in going forward. I don't care what price. You know, I mean, if the shoes don't fit, I'm not going to buy them. So I just don't see. I think time and energy spent looking at this site is frankly a waste.
Maybe it would be worth moving back to the evaluation, the additional information we have on the St. Croix Meadows site as a comparison that we could talk about a little further if we could have that opportunity to move back and consider that information and then maybe reopen this conversation.
I'd be happy to do that. I'm going to throw one more thing in there. And Brian, there's part of me that says I'd be interested, but the truth of the matter is we said no to a free piece of land because it didn't meet our minimum requirements. So I'm not, while it would be interesting to know what the price is, as I play out the ultimate end game, it doesn't seem as though we would say yes to a piece of land that has a cost attached to it, since we said no to a piece of land that essentially would have been donated to us. So anyway, for what it's worth, Mary. Oh, Tim, we're going back to you?
Back to me, yes. Sorry. I'm going to have Angela Polpenhagen from Stevens Engineers, Sam Stotts from Hoffman, and Gary Zappa from Zappa Brothers come up. And they're going to talk a little bit about the infrastructure value. The building value report was given to you last month, and they're here to talk in depth about the infrastructure value out at St. Croix Meadows track. So, Sam, I'll let you start it out.
And Sam, if you, yeah, real close. Thank you.
Red's up. Got it. Thank you, everybody, for having us here on behalf of Angela and Gary. Hoffman and Stevens Engineers and Zappa, I've had the pleasure of working with them actually on this project as well. We're asked to put together some effort to understand a little bit more as an extension of the previous study that we completed that was more really detailed on the building portion of that, to also extend that into what type of value is on the site, which there's some extensive value for the pieces that are on the site as well. So what we've done as a team is to try to coordinate and have coordinated some efforts to make sure that we've studied the items, and Angela and Gary will get into that a little bit more about the lengths that they went through to make sure that they understood the value, what type of systems are out there, are they still viable, is there things that we need to consider as far as putting a number to a value. And that's one of the things that we've tried to do throughout this process, is to try to remain realistic but conservative. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the building, but I want to have them talk a little bit first about the infrastructure, and then I'll give you a little bit of an update of some things that I found out on the building piece and the value that's with that as well. So Angela, if you want to talk a little bit first.
We were asked to look at this site infrastructure, and we were looking at what is out there, what's usable, and then what the value of that is. And so we started off our study with one of my engineering inspectors, and Gary Zappa went out to the site and randomly looked at all the different pieces of infrastructure. And so those are listed under the site utility structures. What we looked at is what water main is out there, so what hydrants are out there, what valves are out there. We spoke with the city, and they've looked at, they have exercised or tested those valves. Actually, in 2010, they went through and tested all of the valves, and they all are in working properly, and tested the hydrants. So we looked at that infrastructure. We looked at the stormwater, looked at the catch basins and the pipes that the stormwater runs in, and we looked at the sanitary sewer piping, the different manholes, and the services that would support any sanitary on the site, as well as the ponding on site. So with that analysis, we then put a cost or a value to those infrastructure. And what we found, I guess what Gary found, but is that pretty much the infrastructure that is in place, those items, are in very good working condition. Obviously, they've been in place for almost 20 years, but a typical pipe life or infrastructure is anywhere from 80 to 100 years. So you have some of the value gone, but not a lot. So that's why we put an estimate of, if you would install it now, kind of a low end of the cost, $1 to install it versus a high end. So we got a total value. of all the infrastructure out there. And then we said, some of your pipe cost, you know, it's 20 years old, so that's about 20% of the value is off. And then some of the stuff that's there, maybe not all of it's going to be used by the school. So we took another 30% off. So just to be very conservative, we said, taking those costs of what's out there and saying only 50% is going to be usable, we felt was very conservative and would give you a value of what's already in place that could be reused. One of the items you'll see in there that's not, that we didn't include, we have the asphalt, the gravel for the parking lot, but we felt that the asphalt itself is kind of breaking up and wouldn't be usable, so we did not include any of those costs in there at all. So again, I'm just trying to show you that we are very conservative in estimating what's out there, what's usable, and what you wouldn't have to basically put in if you were building a new site, because the sanitary's already there, the water's there, and storm sewer. You also have some existing ponding on site, which is a regional pond. Again, we looked at how that serves that property, and we actually only said about 60% of that pond is for that site. So we only took 60% of that value. So again, we are being very conservative of what's out there and what would need to be replaced. Do you want to see?
Angela is correct. We did, in fact, inspect several of the structures. The infrastructure is in from good to very good condition. I rated it. All of the valves are operating. All of the hydrants meet Hudson spec. All of the piping is class 3, class 4, storm sewer, concrete. The sanitary sewers, again, meet Hudson spec, SDR 35. It's all PVCs. Water mains class 52. All of the structures that we did inspect I didn't see any problems in any. Some of the adjusting rings needed some adjustments, just minor adjustments that we typically do to city infrastructure every so many years. Typically, the useful life on bituminous is rated at around 20 years to 25 years, depending on what type of mix you use. So that surface would probably have to be removed.
One of the things, too, I'm going to ask Gary to comment on is what we had to do. The challenge with this is trying to identify a value on that site. There's obviously a lot of things on that site, but we tried to remain conservative in the fact that we need to understand what's going to be reused and how is that going to provide value. So as far as the pieces that are on site, if that was going to be new, I know, Gary, you've put together some numbers. If that site was to be built as it is today, the value that's on there, if you want to maybe just speak quickly to that as well.
Well, what I did is we looked at it as though it was a new project. I was able to get some of the old plans from 1990, and if we took we used 31.61 acres, 153,350 square yards. If we were to build that with all of the infrastructure that's there, we would be...
That's just the paving, though, right? The paved area is the 31, not the whole site.
That is not the whole site. That is correct. That does not include approaches and exits. Okay, and we can talk about that too in a little bit. But we would be at a cost just based on, and again, these costs fluctuate a lot because of the volatility of oil and steel. But right now we'd be at just short of $6 million to improve that, to make those same improvements on a raw site. Okay, so the estimates that are up there are right where they should be, depending on how much. Again, we have some unknowns. We don't have enough data to know how big a parking lot, how big of how many entrances. We do know that site will handle a tremendous amount of traffic flow. It was designed for that, and that is very important. Getting to what Sam was talking about, the approaches. You know, you could spend $200,000 to $400,000. Some of those are elevated. If you had a raw site where we're simply at grade and we didn't have a lot of vertical challenges, you'd still be into $150,000 to $200,000. So that's some savings that is there in their heart. So.
So to hit on that just a little bit again, what we've tried to do is understand the separation of a site that would be off-site, not this, a green site somewhere else, but we also had to be reconciling, okay, what if this was a raw site, which this could have been a raw piece of property, what would we have had to do to bring that site up to what it needed to be for parks? So, and I would say the elevated ramps and things probably would be maybe more like 5 to even 700,000, depending on the actual extent of what would have been needed. If you recall, there's that overpass that you're driving under. Some of those things are very pricey items if that was going to be a raw site. So to have those in place already on that location is a lot of value that we did not include in this because we are again trying to be conservative in the measures that we're putting here. And lastly, I wanted to just hit on the last piece that's on this is the demolition of the existing structures. And Gary has also done a wonderful job with the numbers that he put together, trying to estimate what it would take for the structures that wouldn't be used and make sure that the value that's there, we also want to make sure we're taking into account or what are some costs that we would have to do that are extra costs to this property because those structures are there. So we've included those, and you can see that we have not included those at a reduced rate. Those are at what we thought the full rate would be for the cost to actually remove those structures. And Gary, if you want to just hit on that quickly too.
Yes, Sam is correct. There's a tremendous amount of potential recycle value, and we did not include really much of that. And that value, I did give Tim some numbers a year ago on that value. It could be, 10 to 20% of those, the numbers that are up there right now. So Sam had asked us to give some partial demolitions, and that's on the lower item there that is from 250 to 300,000. That's a fairly economical value considering, again, if we take into consideration the recyclable materials that are in there. So.
And one of the things too that we were considering that could provide value is the parking lot right now is probably excessive when you would talk about a school that would be going there. So there would be opportunities that once the paving is milled to be able to use some of the stone potentially that's underneath right now as some structural fill on the site and really save on cost of what typically, I don't know, what is the stone typically right now up here a yard? Cost per yard.
Cost per yard in place would be anywhere from $15 to $18 per cubic yard.
So if we've got right now 119,000 square yards of the asphalt subbase. If it's 12 inches thick, that's divided by 3. This is a school board. I apologize. I don't know that in my head. I'll work on that. Yeah, it's
40.
Thank you. That's what I was going to say, but I wanted to get. I'm going to move on. I'm not on a test right now. But we try to understand what are some other opportunities as well that aren't even represented on this, that there's going to be some crushed concrete, but without even having the cost of the crushed concrete, because that you would have to have a cost to crush that, you would have the opportunity to have structural base that's already available right there to be able to be used. So that's going to be a value right now that's not represented. And then quickly, I wanted to just hit on some additional information. Obviously, a big chunk of this, and I've spoke to you previously about the $4.5 million to 6.7 in the actual building itself. That's a big chunk of that. And I want to just make sure that everybody understands there's some additional information that I've had. We've actually been working with another client that had some property that was going to be renovation of an existing hotel, a 180-bed hotel. And right now, for a full remodel of that building, which would include roughly about $2.2 million in FF&E for that building, we're still at about an $85 a square foot cost to renovate that. And that would be all new heating. Wouldn't be as much walls and things that you would need to do to obviously interior and shape the interior that you need here because the walls are already there. But still $85 a square foot, including $2.2 million in furniture. And my point is that if I'm at roughly 175, Rivercrest was built for 166 and it was 29% lower than what the standard was, average at that time, I should say. So if you say 175 and you take off 85 from that, you're still at $90 a square foot to remodel. And I'm only at 50 to 75 bucks savings here. So I think you've got opportunities, even if you can save an additional $25 a square foot, that's another 2.2 million, 2.25 million that could go on to those two numbers that are possible, but not included. But so it's a pretty big chunk of change that's still very possible given some recent data that we've been going through. We've also had some other projects that were pretty full-scale gut and remodels to I guess use a generic term, which included HVAC and some window replacements, and those were both done at $50 a square foot. So and those were done within the last 12 months. So that's some pretty recent data, and again, really solidifies my comfort with the savings are realistic in that 90,000 square foot. So I just wanted to give that update. And I think at this point, we've covered everything that we wanted to go through in the report. Does anybody have any questions?
Are there questions from the board?
Madam President.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure who to direct it to, but Sam, maybe I can start with you. You talked about demo briefly, but can you maybe tell the audience what structures we're talking about or what you're including in that demolition number?
I'll turn that to Gary.
Specifically, you want to know what demolition is proposed in this?
What buildings we're talking about demolishing, or what structures? I don't know that it was talked about specifically.
Well, we're talking about leaving the main structure and then raising all the other out structures. And then Sam had came to me with keeping part of the structure, and that would be the east portion where the elevated grandstands are. That portion would be selective demolition. That would all be removed.
This also would include a parking lot, the track signboard, the dog kennels, the paddock building, and then there's another concrete structure that was south of the main building. So it's pretty much, it was everything else on the site that would be included in that demolition. And then the partial demolition was broken out separately.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Dan?
Trying to get my arms around a little bit of this conceptually. If I understand you guys correctly, it sounds as if we're able to salvage upwards of 50% of this facility, we would be able to accrue these kinds of savings. So if we get into this project and we find out that maybe we can't salvage as much of the building as we think we can salvage, does that mean some of the salvage value of the piping and that part of it would then start diminishing? I mean, just talk me through sort of the 40,000 foot level as opposed to the specific dollars.
I'll start with the building portion of that, and then I'll turn over the piping piece to Angela. The building portion of it was included in the previous study. This was that extension. The only reason I bring up the building tonight again was to just update the group with some additional information that I've had since the last time with the client that we've been working with more recently, and putting together some additional numbers for a project that would be not really of similar scope, but it's of same magnitude of a remodel that we were talking with them. But the building study provided the information that we felt comfortable that we would be able to save about 90,000 square feet of that because it was usable space. Again, to just refresh a little bit, there is going to be some remodeling. There would be some areas where we would have to fill structurally. There's probably going to be some structural issues that we would have to attend to, and that's the reason why we were saying it wouldn't be necessarily the full cost, because we understand, like with the piping, we've held only 50% of the value. We are trying to be realistic in when it's all said and done and the remedies are taking place, for instance, the roof repair, obviously walls need to be built and those areas need to be infilled. That's where we felt the 50 to 75 was realistic, and I think we could probably even improve upon that. So I think as far as the 90,000 square feet of the building, I feel comfortable saying that that's a very realistic number that we would be able to achieve, because we would literally cut off that side of the building. That's the stadia seating, which is really not, it's not to say it couldn't be used, but it would probably be cost ineffective to try to salvage that area. Whereas the other stuff was a flat floor, and we would be able to reuse that and design around that to make sure that that could work. And as far as the infrastructure pieces, I'll turn that to Angela.
Basically, the building or no building, or what you're going to salvage or not, when you replace that building, you would put it generally in the same spot. You would want to keep the parking lot generally in the same spot. All of that underground infrastructure, the sanitary water, storm, would remain the same and remain in place, and we'd be able to reuse that. And that's why, as I said, you know, I took off 20% roughly for the pipe age, but 30% of the pipe might not be reusable. So that's where you're still going to try to salvage as much of that infrastructure and put it in the logical spots.
Also, there is possibly 20% of the existing curb and gutter that has some cracks and some deterioration. So some of those surface items would need to be replaced, especially if you're going to put a whole new surface on there. And striping is quite a large item for a parking lot that big, you know. So you'll spend $35,000 just striping that lot. So the things can add up. I think one of the other items in terms of demolition was all of the out structures would be raised. The dog kennels themselves are not in the greatest of condition, and I'm not sure that you could find any use for them per se. Teachers may come up with some ideas, but you know.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Mark?
Yes, Madam President. Just first, I guess a point of clarification. Sam, did you say, kind of based on some recent remodel experience, that you thought that these are already, I know, very conservative estimates, but did I hear you say that there could potentially be upwards of another $1 to $2 million that is actually not on here based on comparing those remodeling costs to that hotel you were mentioning? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, we have a couple of projects that had heating revisions done. One was actually a full heating remodel. We had to gut the entire building out, replace the heating system. The electrical, I would say probably 75% of the electrical was redone to make it work for the client. And that was about $50 a square foot, and it had all the aesthetics that needed to be done. Now, there wasn't a lot of wall framing because we tried to reuse, that's not to say there wasn't any, but for the most part, we tried to reuse the existing walls and design to that. But even still, that was at $50 a square foot. So if you take that off of a $175 baseline, just for the sake of argument, knowing that Rivercrest was $166, I think you'd be, you know, $125. And I don't think you're going to need to be. What that means is that would give you $125 a square foot to remodel, which I don't think you would need to get to $125. That's obviously huge speculation because sure, we've got a lot to do, but given the parameters, I think you could estimate that there's a very real possibility you could save an additional $1 to $2 million on top of what's here.
And what's here is a low
Sizable
estimate of almost $5 to $7.5 million on a piece of property which we're paying what, $8 million, eight and a quarter, right? $8.25. So, I mean, I think that geez, this is just fantastic news to realize that we've got really close to our purchase price, potentially, and certainly almost over half of it in value there. Not to mention, I think, the added benefit of recycling some of this material. The sustainability, I think, appeals to me a great deal too, but there's an awful lot of economic value in that site. So, thanks.
Tom?
Just a question. My understanding is that there was no value of savings given to the exits and entrance ramps in the property. What's your thinking about that? Because I understand they're probably overbuilt for our purposes right now, but what I also believe is that there would probably, in any other setting where we have to build everything new, that there would need to be some kind of entrance and exits provided.
I can answer that, I think, a little, and then if there's things that you want to add on, please do. But really, the thought process was, again, trying to be conservative in nature, not trying to artificially inflate something that, right now, the design is not complete. There's no design as far as what anything would happen as far as on that site. Realistically, obviously, though, you're going to try to reuse the things that you can, meaning even the curbs, the infrastructure that's on site, as Angela mentioned, putting the building in the same spot. The likelihood of not using those ramps is very low. But because we're not certain of what the design is, we just made the note at the bottom to say there's very likely some high value in those, but for now, we're going to leave them off. That was the reason. Okay. And did I miss anything? Or? No. Okay.
And Sam, I wrote down that you said the elevated approaches could be worth as much as $500,000 to $700,000. Yes?
Yeah,
okay.
That's correct. I'd look left here. But
All right. Are there other questions from the board? Mary?
I'd just like to summarize this a little, looking at the bottom line up on our chart up here. So what I've heard you say, and I just want to make sure this is correct. If we look at the value of the savings up at the top, not the red numbers, but the black numbers, those are costs that we would have in construction to build a building that we are going to save based on these estimates. And we could save quite a bit more. Possibility. That these are very conservative and you're very comfortable with these. Then we have the demolition, so that they're against the demolition cost, that's taken out. And then at the bottom line, we have a savings in the construction of $4.8 million to $7.4 million, and what we just heard you say, that those could be over $2 million more in savings, which would actually be more than the purchase price. The savings could be higher than the purchase price of the property at $8.25 million.
And yes, there is potential there. There would have to be, obviously, the design would need to be steered towards trying to reuse as much as possible, which I think just makes good sense as far as being stewards to the environment and being sustainable. But there is that potential that you could save that additional and actually get over the purchase price if those would be achieved.
It has to be fairly unusual to have a site where the savings, the infrastructure savings that we're talking about that actually has demolition as well, could have value above the purchase price of the property.
That is unusual, but there's a lot of value in the building that's there. That building it was built to stand the test of time. It is structurally very sound, so the shell, with some creative design, could be reused and really provide a large portion of the cost that would be construction to not have to be put into construction costs at the time of the building.
All right. Any final questions? So with that, unless there are other questions, this was a report. I'm going to suggest that we move into the remainder of the agenda. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. All right. We do have the next item under the report section is actually the employee handbook provisions. Nancy.
Right. A real switch in topic here. As we move close to the completion of the employee handbook, we thought it would be of some value to very briefly just overview what has already been put in place. In April of 2011, before implementation of the new legislation, the Hudson Employee Handbook work began with the board's adoption of the provision for retirement for teachers eligible for retirement benefits before July 1, 2016. So going back to April 2011, the work started. Additional provisions have been adopted 6 of the last 8 months of board meetings thereafter and include retirement pay for support employees, a grievance procedure for all employees, leaves of absence for all employees, insurance benefits for all employees, teacher compensation for educational advancement, employee compensation for extracurricular and extra duty responsibilities, probationary period for teachers, teacher and support employee evaluation systems, language associated with reductions and layoffs, and a change in the school calendar for 2012-13, providing for an increased number of student and teacher days. All of these handbook provisions have been considered by the Personnel Committee of the board before being considered by the full board for adoption, and then nearly all of the provisions were developed with input from the Teacher Advisory Committee. Support employee priorities were solicited during 2 meetings, one the beginning of the summer 2011 and another this fall. And tonight the board, later in the agenda, will receive a recommendation for the adoption of 5 more provisions. And with the February meeting, those new provisions requiring board adoption should be complete pursuant to our working timeline. And then the provisions required by law, regulation, administrative procedure forms are scheduled for completion in April. So that's a very brief kind of reminder of the work that a lot of people have done and you have done.
Unless there are questions for Nancy, we'll move on to the final item in the report section of the agenda, which are the 2012 WASB Convention Assembly resolutions, which were included in your packet this evening. And what I would like to remind you of is that Pat, who is our delegate, will be representing Hudson, and she will be part of the group that will take action on those items at the convention next week. If you have any questions or comments about those specific items, you certainly could let Mary know what particular questions that you have. All right. And before we move into the citizens' request to speak, which is item 7 on the agenda, just to go back and close this off, so given the recommendation of the Facilities and Grounds Committee, the district will not be pursuing the St. Croix County land availability then. All right. We do have one citizen request to speak this evening. I know it is on the first topic for action item. And so, unless there are others that are on non-agenda topics, you can bring it forward to Diane Radel. All right. So there are no requests to address the board on non-agenda items. So we will move into the topics for action, and at this point, I will invite, I will turn it over to Tim to introduce the topic, and then I will invite our guest to come forward and speak.
The first item, topic 9A, is the initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $8,250,000. And that resolution would be read and a roll call vote taken to move forward with that resolution. I don't know if you've had any questions regarding the resolution at this point.
All right, with no questions, then I will invite folks that have expressed an interest to come forward and address the board. The first request that we have is from Paul Moen. Let's see. Thank you. And Paul, if you could just state your name and your address, and yeah, really close.
I'm gonna raise it up. I've got shorter speakers. My name is Paul Moen. I'm 738 Deer Path Road North in Hudson. And I want to speak on support of the referendum that Tim had just introduced and thank the board for authorizing us to go forward with the referendum. And this isn't all full, it's just one page. So I do have 5 points that I want to make, and I'm here really as a, I've been in North Hudson for...
Paul, can I, because we're
sorry.
being videotaped, thank you.
So I can't talk to them, okay.
If you spun the microphone around.
So I've been a citizen of North Hudson almost 14 years, and I own no business in town. I've put my children through school, and so I'm not here as any conflict of interest. I'm just here as a citizen speaking on behalf. 5 points I want to make tonight. First of all, let's think of the city of Hudson. I don't think there's anyone in our community that would dispute the fact that our community is one of the fastest growing communities in the state, if not the region. And there is no indication that that is going to change any period of time soon. So if we continue on this growth pattern with the existing structures we have, if we aren't growing out of our facilities today, we will be. On our facilities, the middle school and the high school, if not today, in the near future, will be at or over capacity, which I think they may be today. And again, same thing applies. The classes coming in are no smaller than the ones leaving, so it's not like all of a sudden the bigger class sizes, we're going to have less classes, so less of a need for a building. And what happens to our quality of education when the classes get bigger? It goes down. There's proof there. The third point, and we've just heard it tonight, there's no other location in our community that has 4 things. Infrastructure, we just heard it, available now, free, it's still, it's still to be determined, but if you, going into it, have 4.5 to 6.5 million, I'm going to count, but that's pretty close to 8.2. So we have the ability to buy this property for nothing. And the other thing, which I think really is a neat benefit, and there's no one that can dispute this, there is no other location in town that we can get all of our athletic and civic events on one campus. How many times have we gone to different sporting events and had to drive to another one? Wouldn't it be nice as a community to have it all here on a high school related? There is no other location for that. So those are the 4 things regarding the property. The 4th point is the high school is one of our community trophies. That is something we as a community should be able to show off to any business owner coming to town or any prospective family and say, you know what, this is one of our cornerstones of our community. You need to move here. We can't say that today, in my opinion. The building's 50 years old. We've all walked in them, and the building has been patched together, band-aided, and it's served its purpose for a 4-year high school. It's still very usable, but on a smaller scale. 5th point, and most important, is the kids. We all have kids out here, and the kids in our community look to us as property owners to provide them a quality education. It's not up to them, it's up to us. And I'll tell you what, if we don't provide it to them, there's going to be a period of time down the road here where we're not going to be able to look them in the face and say, kids, we're giving you the best education money can buy. There's going to be a point in time, the way things are today, we're not going to be able to do that. And I tell you what, any kid in any community deserves to have that. And that's why, in my opinion, we need to support this referendum. We need to get out the vote, and there's no other choice. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. The next request that I have is from Dan Bushman. Dan, if you want to come forward. And again, if you'll state your name and your address.
I'm Dan Bushman. I live at 1303 St. Croix Heights. That's right behind the current high school. I didn't realize I was going to have such a hard time following Paul.
And Dan, if I can ask you to get really close to the microphone as well, thank you.
Oh, I will.
Thank you.
I wanted to say this. In 2004, Brian Bell, Paul Moan, and a bunch of other citizens was on the Hudson Facilities Task Force. And we sorted through mountains of information. We had meeting after meeting after meeting. Those meetings were informative. Those meetings were debated, places for debate. They were respectful. But in the end, we sorted through lots of options, and in the end, the two real recommendations were that we needed to build another grade school, which we are now standing in, and we knew that the day would come when a high school was needed. What I remember from all that information was Hazel Reinhardt's projections as to how big the population of students was going to be, and what I see on right now, she was right on 7 years ago, and she continues to be right on. I'm here to say the time has come that this move where that dog track is for sale, it's for sale for a song, it's got great assets to it. The time has come to move forward on this. There are citizens in this community who will support this wholeheartedly. They do need to be informed. They do need to have lots of information. They do need to see. There is so much information that needs to be sent out there. But a good, informed community will make a good decision. That track will be ours. And finally, we'll have a facility that we actually need. Okay? Now, as a way of demographics, I've been living in this community for 23 years. My daughter is graduating now, my youngest. I don't have any skin in this game anymore, okay? I could take the attitude that because I don't have a kid in this district, all this means is additional property taxes to me. I'm not going to do that. I know we got a community out there that will feel the same way, and the time has come. We have to have the facilities to house the kids and to educate them properly. Finally, as a way of demographics, I'm an HR manager, and I'm an HR manager at a factory. I don't actually get to talk to college-educated students very often. I do get to talk to kids who ultimately come out of schools and they wind up working in factories. My personal, you think this is a joke, but I will tell you that the level I look at is if they've misspelled the name of their high school, and it also happened to be the name of the town that they lived in, that low I can't go. You do need to educate kids. You do need to make sure that they have the basics, okay? This is going to be a huge step. So I'm here to tell you that there's a community that will support you. I'm here to help you, and I'm putting my stake in the ground on this one. I am going to put my stake in the ground on one other thing. As somebody who drives through the Carmichael and Vine intersection every morning and every evening, if you choose to build something on that corner, you're not going to do it with my tax money because I'm moving, okay? Just wanted to throw that in. And I think I can rally a good force that would say exactly the same thing. Thanks for listening. I may be back again. You got my support. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have one final citizen's request to speak, and that is from, and I apologize, I'm not going to get this right, Mary Beth Lorbecki Mataya.
So I appreciate you got my name right, and that's pretty hard.
So your name and your address, Mary Beth.
Yes, I'm Mary Beth Lorbecki Mataya, said perfectly well. I'm from North Hudson, 210 7th Street North. I have 2 kids who'll be out of the game, one who might be in the tail end. But I teach at the University at River Falls in English. And I see what happens to all the school systems that are eroding. They come to me. I get the required 200 level course. And it's depressing. The kids are writing about school districts all around where they're cutting everything. And they're not getting their education, and I can see it. So, first of all, I thank you all for serving on this board, because you're doing us a service. And I thank you for all the due diligence you're doing. Nobody's rashly doing anything. But the numbers are substantiating what needs to be done. The middle school bubble population is going to come up. And being in education, I've looked at it for a long time, and you get social problems when your schools are too big and they can't personalize the education. Then those effects of bad education, you know, not being able to keep your high caliber of education, keep the kids engaged, keep things going, you end up with crime and different drugs and everything else. So it's a ripple effect whether you have a child in the system or not. So I applaud you thinking about that, preparing for it. I think we do need the referendum. I don't think we'll ever get a better deal. And I am just impressed with all the work that's been done to use what resources we have as opposed to reconstructing the wheel. And that site has infrastructure we can use. And whether we put it on the county or we put it on, anytime we put infrastructure anywhere, it comes back to the taxes for us. So if we use a different site that's not as suited, someone else is going to have to retrofit this one or whatever. This one's suited to us. It's suited for a big development, and it was built at 40 million or whatever it was to last. So we can take advantage of that. And the last point I'd like to make is we are not going to get lower interest rates or bond rates again. We are not going to get lower construction rates because people want construction jobs. This is, unfortunately, when you're in a recession, it's the best time to build. And you hate to say that, but it is, for the long run, best for the community to get people working, use it, and then those people who are working can pay taxes. So what we invest in this comes back, and we're already seeing that happen by the fact that we get more than the value for the price of that. So we do need to move forward, and I, again, thank you for the due diligence to be thinking reuse, reuse, reuse instead of brand new, let's have it, you know, whatever, designed to fit what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so board members, Tim has introduced the resolution. If there is someone who would like to make a motion, I will need you to read the full language on that resolution page in the packet.
Madam President, I'll take a stab at it. Be it resolved by the School Board of the School District of Hudson, St. Croix County, Wisconsin, that there shall be issued pursuant to Chapter 67, Wisconsin Statutes, general obligation bonds in amount not to exceed $8,250,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of acquisition of a school site of approximately 126 acres of land and the improvements thereon located at 2200 Carmichael Road, generally known as the St. Croix Meadows property. Be it further resolved that the district clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish a notice to electors in substantially the form attached hereto as Attachment 1 in the Hudson Star Observer within 10 days of the adoption of the foregoing resolution. Be it further resolved that pursuant to Section 67.05, Parent 6A, Parent A, 2A of the Wisconsin statutes, the foregoing initial resolution shall be submitted to the school district electors for approval or rejection at the April 3rd, 2012 election. The initial resolution shall not be effective unless adopted by a majority of the school district electors voting at the referendum.
All right, and with that, there is a motion. Is there a second? Second by Lynn. We will do a roll call vote.
Bell, aye.
Robson, aye.
Holland, aye.
Chernow, aye.
Van Loon and I.
German, aye.
Kaisershot, aye.
That motion has passed. All right. Tim, do you want to introduce the next topic for action?
Sure. The second resolution provides for a referendum election on the question of the approval of the initial resolution that you just passed and the issuance of general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $8,250,000.
Are there questions for Tim? Hearing none, the smart board member would have introduced the last motion because I'll need someone to make a motion and read the resolution language here. This happens to be over a page, so go for it, somebody.
Madam President, whereas the school board of the School District of Hudson, St. Croix County, Wisconsin, the district, has duly adopted an initial resolution entitled Initial Resolution Authorizing Issuance of General Obligation Bonds in an amount not to exceed $8,250,000, the initial resolution. Whereas the school board has determined to submit the initial resolution directly to the electors of the district for rejection or approval pursuant to Section 67.05, Parent 6A, Parent A, 2A of the Wisconsin statutes. And whereas the initial resolution shall not be effective unless it is approved by a majority of the district electors voting at the referendum. Now therefore, be it resolved by the school board of the district as follows. Section 1, referendum election date. A referendum election shall be held in the district on April 3rd, 2012, for the purpose of submitting to the qualified electors of the district the proposition of whether the initial resolution shall be approved. Section 2, polling places. The district electors will vote in the referendum election at their regular polling places. Section 3, notice of referendum election. The Hudson Star Observer is the official newspaper of the district with weekly publication on Thursdays. The district clerk or his/her designee is directed to give notice of the referendum election as follows. A, by publishing a Type A notice of referendum election in substantially the form attached hereto as Exhibit A in the Hudson Star Observer on March 1st, 2012. B, by publishing a Type B notice in substantially the form attached hereto as Exhibit B, which includes a facsimile ballot and voting instructions to electors in the Hudson Star Observer on March 29th, 2012. And C, by publishing a Type C notice of referendum in substantially the form attached hereto as Exhibit C in the Hudson Star Observer on March 29th, 2012. This notice should be printed as close as possible to the ballot portion of the Type B notice. Section 4, absentee ballots. The municipal clerks of the municipalities within the district are hereby designated and appointed as the officials who shall receive applications for absentee ballots and initially the same when issued to qualified absentee voters. Section 5, report of results of referendum election. In accordance with Section 67.05, Parent 3, Parent G of the Wisconsin statutes, the referendum election shall be held and conducted, and the votes cast thereat counted and canvassed as in other matters voted upon, and the results certified forthwith to the clerk of the district. The district clerk shall then report the result of the referendum election to the school board at its next regular or special meeting.
Thank you, Lynn. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Pat. Roll call vote.
Bell, aye.
Robson, aye.
Holland, aye.
Chernow, aye.
Van Loon and I.
German, aye.
Kaiser shot aye.
Motion has passed. All right. The next item under topics for action is the school-age care fees. Nancy.
Right. School-age care is a fee-for-service program that the school district offers before and after school during the school year, and there's also a summer program as well. And no tax dollars are used in the program. And we do need occasionally to look at comparables, and we need occasionally to consider raising rates to cover the cost of the program and to not seriously undercut other, especially local, daycare providers. So we are recommending an increase in the before and after school care fees and also the summer school age care fees for next year. We have not increased the rates before and after school or during the summer since 2009. The Personnel Committee reviewed quite a bit of data, looked at comparables. We looked at what nearby school districts charge for school-age care. We looked at the cost local private school, area public centers, and also local private center So we were looking at comparables. For the before and after school care, we are recommending a 20-cent increase per session. Each session is 3 hours in length, before school, after school, up to three hours, but $6.20. That's a 3% increase over 2 years. It's a 1.5% increase. Looking at comparables, they range from $5 to $13 per session, with an average of $8.50. So we are still very, very reasonable in relation to comparables. And by the way, the drop-in cost, our program provides for that, and most of the other programs, and in fact, we didn't find any that provided for just drop-in, but that is a need that some of our parents have for their children, and so that's represented here too. The summer school-age care, the low-end range and all of the programs, at least the majority of them, provided for a lower cost for more use and a higher cost for less use. Not all of them, but most of them provided that way, and that is our history as well. On the low end, the range is $23 to $33 per day. The average $28.60 per day. We're recommending $25.50 per day. That's about a 2% increase for those that, and the Personnel Committee was very interested in having the increase impact least those who need and use the service most. So that's kind of how this was calculated. So a 2% increase, 1% each of 2 years. And then at the top end would be 5% or 2.5% each of 2 years. And the comparables were ranged from $27 to $40. The average $32, $34, and we're recommending $31.50. Other providers, these comparables were this year's rate or last summer's rate, and other providers indicated that they are going to also raise their rates, or they are considering increasing their rates, but we don't know what their new rates will be. So that's the recommendation that we would make effective for this summer 2012, and then for before and after school care beginning with the 2012-2013 school year.
Madam President, Nancy, is there a provision in our community for this program for those that are low income? I mean, do we have any kind of arrangements where there are subsidies for children that can't afford?
This particular program, it's a fee-for-service program, but there are families with on county assistance, and the money that they receive from the county, they will often choose to use for care. And given the reasonable cost of our program, they certainly are represented in the program. The other thing that's done occasionally, but it's not meant to be a continuing support, but occasionally when a family falls on hard times and they can't pay for a month of care, we do have what's called the angel funds in each of our schools, and in fact the United Way contributes to those angel funds, and it's a private way to support them just temporarily.
So it's your belief that there are no children that are prohibited, so to speak, because of financial issues from participating? Not
necessarily, but I mean we're not a county assistance program either, but care is expensive for people, but our costs are really quite reasonable. And comparatively speaking, very, very much so.
Madam President? Nancy, I know that our summer school age care program
Mhm.
provides for field trips. Do the comparables have that in place as well, do you know?
Several of them do not. Our costs that are represented here provide for the field trip costs. And some of the programs provide field trips and others don't.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Pat?
Is this in regards to just one child, or if there's two?
This would be one.
Okay, so if there's
Mhm.
two children in the same family, they pay this same amount?
That's true.
Okay.
Are there other questions? No. All right. Is there a board member who would like to make a motion to approve the school age care fees?
I would move that we approve the proposed 2012 and 13 rates for both before and after school care, as well as the summer school age care.
Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Dan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Nancy. And then employee handbook provisions.
Okay. Get to my next folder here. Okay, I'll take them in order of how they're stated on the agenda there. The first is the compensation process for teachers. And this particular provision of the handbook recognizes that we are, as an employer, in competition with other districts to attract and retain qualified, high-performing teachers. Certainly, there are other factors other than base salary and benefits, like professional development opportunities, district reputation, community characteristics. We've heard that from our teachers most recently on the advisory. There are other factors, but it's undeniable that what we pay teachers and what their benefits are valued at is also important. The base salary is for teachers, is subject to negotiation with between the district and West Central Education Association, and there are legislative parameters around that. In an effort to remain competitive, this handbook provision indicates that the district would endeavor periodically to conduct comparability studies of salaries and benefits offered by other districts. We spent time with the Teacher Advisory Committee. We spent time in the Personnel Committee talking about what the comparable districts might be, and we've settled into those of comparable size. We look at high-performing districts of comparable size. You hear every once in a while from Learning Services presenting how our students perform and what evidence of learning Hudson students present in comparison to high-performing districts. And so we would represent them here. And then also some geographic districts within, let's say, approximately 30 miles from Hudson. And that kind of data, again, periodically would be used to inform the board as it makes compensation decisions. Okay. Maybe I can move through them, and if you have questions, we can certainly go back. And then on kind of the support employees, very similarly, we're similarly interested in high-quality, high-performing support employees, and we do compete for them as well. They too value our training opportunities and the reputation of our district and the community, but base wage and benefits are important to them as well. So in an effort to remain competitive, we would again periodically endeavor to conduct comparability studies of wages and benefits, not only offered by other districts within proximity of Hudson, but also other employers. in the community primarily that would hire individuals for similar work. And this data would be used to inform the board to make those compensation decisions. If someone later offers to make a motion to approve this, I would like to change a word in the first sentence here. The district recognizes that it is in competition with other districts. It should be employers, because it isn't just districts for our support employees. Moving to compensation structure for teachers then, and this is transitional because we're studying other compensation structures, but for now at least, the compensation structure is based on the teacher's gross annual salary equal to the previous year's gross annual salary, and then subject to any increase or decrease that would be negotiated by the district with the West Central Education Association. The district, this recognizes our regular payroll schedule in equal installments over a 12-month period, but it also includes an option for the teacher to request a lump sum pay in June for the remainder of the summer. This particular provision does provide for the teacher to authorize the district to deduct certain payments for insurance if applicable. And of course, if the teacher leaves the district for any reason, our obligation to pay would end. This gross annual salary includes compensation for educational advancement. That's an earlier provision of the handbook already in place. And it does exclude, though, compensation for extracurricular, athletic, or non-athletic, or extra duty responsibilities. That's also a provision of the handbook already approved. And I mentioned that this is transitional. It's in place with this school year and will remain in place until a new compensation structure is determined. Similar provision for support employees in not a gross annual salary, but an hourly wage for performing the duties assigned, subject to increase or decrease as determined by the Board of Education. A regular payroll schedule biweekly for actual hours worked, and of course an authorization to make those insurance deductions as applicable, and no obligation to continue if the employee leaves the district. This hourly wage does not include compensation for extracurricular or extra duty responsibilities. We do have support employees who are coaches, athletic coaches, or advisors to clubs, and so that provision of the handbook does apply to them similarly. This would be in effect beginning with this school year until or unless a new compensation structure is determined. Finally, the handbook provision, there's a handbook provision we're proposing that prohibits work stoppage. It applies to all district employees. The language actually is taken from previous local collective bargaining agreements, but it does prohibit work stoppage and defines a variety of work stoppage behaviors.
Are there questions for Nancy? No. Hearing none, my recommendation is that we move those items as a slate unless there's a particular one anyone would like to remove. All right. So if there is someone who would be willing to make the motion to approve the employee handbook provisions as presented by Nancy with the one modification on the compensation process for support employees.
Yes.
So moved.
Motion by Brian. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Nancy. And then we are on the consent agenda items. If there is someone who would be willing to make that motion, reading the language associated with the expenditures.
Madam President, I move to move the consent agenda items and move that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $1,326,281.44.
All right, motion by Lynn, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are on to committee reports. Finance Committee meeting, Lynn.
Madam President, the Finance Committee met on Tuesday, January 3rd. On the agenda was the school age care fees, which the board took action on previously. We also reviewed the 2010-11 financial audit as presented in the report section of our agenda tonight. Next on the agenda for finance, Tim presented some very, very preliminary budget information to the committee. Projections indicate that the budget could be down from last year, but it is so early and information is so sparse that it's just too early to even put a number on it. And lastly, the committee reviewed the resolution for referendum approved this evening under the topics for action.
All right, any questions for Lynn? Hearing none, the Learning and Program Development Committee report, we had 3 items on our agenda. The first was a report on the new freshman advisory, and we were joined by Assistant Principal Langer and Principal Laura Love. And they really talked about the success that they're seeing as they have now implemented the freshman advisory, which formerly was an FYI program that was transitionary for new high school students. We then had a report by Mr. DeLune on RTI, Response to Intervention, and PBIS, which are Positive Behavioral Intervention System. Right? And really, Mr. DeLune's report just talked about a new framework that has been implemented across many of our schools and at some level in all of our schools for delivering appropriate interventions for the students. And the last item that we discussed was some information that Corey McIntyre shared on pre-expulsion and expulsion data that was very encouraging. The pre-expulsion process that we use here in the Hudson School District has been very successful, and we are actually sought out on that process by a number of other school districts. And as a result, we are seeing fewer and fewer actual expulsions at the board level. And we expressed our gratitude to the administration teams for the work that they do in pre-expulsion. So, other questions for Learning and Program Development? Then the next committee, Facilities and Grounds. Tom.
The Facilities and Grounds Committee met on January 9th. We had 5 items of agenda. The first was the land purchase, the St. Croix Meadows update, as well as the infrastructure report, both of which we heard tonight. Secondly, we talked about the St. Croix land availability, also which was discussed at this meeting tonight, so I won't go over that. Thirdly, we talked about the what-ifs in terms of how we handle growth in the 6th through 12th grade levels if we don't have a construction option, if, for example, the referendum doesn't pass and so forth. We just talked briefly about some of the scenarios that might fall out of that, but nothing in really any detail. Fourthly, we talked about the middle school outdoor learning center that is under construction now, thanks to good weather and to the local Rotary Club. So we're looking forward to that. And finally, we discussed the 2012 and 13 preliminary budget planning as it relates to capital projects, and depending on how state aids work and the budget position contingencies that we may need to use with the capital budget project list. However, we noted as a committee that we want to be careful that, I think there's room for use of some funds there. We want to be careful not to overstep in the sense where we're not fixing roofs where it's going to cost us more money in the long run. Those are some of the discussions. So, any questions?
Other questions for Tom? I have one. Tom, on the space issues for the 6 to 12 grades, and you may not be able to, I'm sorry, you may not be able to answer this, but for Tim or Mary, certainly we're going to have some amount of time that will elapse between today and when we're able to provide additional space, be it another building or some other kind of long-term solution.
Right.
So have you started having those conversations? What do we do for the next 24 months or the next 36 months while we wait for a longer-term solution?
Just as when we were going to referendum for Rivercrest and that time in between, it makes a difference what solutions you select if you know that there's going to be a solution, a long-term solution at the end. And so we've had some initial discussions, but we haven't gone much further than those at this time. If, for example, the referendum would not be approved, then we would know there'd be a longer term. And as a result, some of the solutions you wouldn't pick in just a few years scenario, you would pick for a longer period of time. So we really need to go forward to the referendum and move forward after that to make decisions. And we'll bring those back certainly to the board and to the Facilities and Grounds Committee.
All right, thank you. We will be adjourning to closed session in just a moment, but I want to let the folks know who have joined us this evening that we will not be returning to open session. So if there is a board member that would make the motion to adjourn to closed session using the language as printed on the agenda.
Madam
President?
President,
I got a
point
few
of order.
notes here. I'd just like to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. You know, I'll get over it.
Yeah, don't take it personally, Mark.
I won't. Well, the Personnel Committee met
Please,
just
Mark,
last night.
tell us about the Personnel
Would you like to
Committee.
hear about it? All right. I'll make this as interesting as possible. As you can see by overhead there, we discussed the administration recommendation for a pool supervisor position. Our pool, as we all know, is a terrific community resource and is under particularly heavy use. And this position is probably long overdue. Now, this is going to be just a part-time. I think the next program kicks off, the next program segment is approximately mid-February to mid-May, and so the total cost of this is pretty nominal. About $1,500 would be, this is again a part-time hourly position to help supervise the pool. And the Personnel Committee did unanimously endorse that. We talked about, as Nancy mentioned earlier, about identification of comparable groups to determine our teacher compensation. With respect to high-performing districts, geography, et cetera. We're also going to move forward with doing something somewhat similar for our administrators, but we're going to be interviewing some outside firms. We feel it's best to take this outside the house to get some comparables for our administrators going forward. We discussed all the many and varied employee handbook provisions, which we approved earlier this evening. Along those lines, just a brief comment. I really want to, thank Nancy and her staff and all the teachers in their groups that participated in this. This has been a lot of work. The landscape changing so dramatically last year. We just didn't have a handbook on the shelf. We've had to really, so it's been a tremendous work, and I just really appreciate all the input and the teachers' enthusiasm in participating in this. It's been very valuable. So my thanks. And then lastly, we had a closed session. Addressing confidential issues with respect to disciplinary and compensation matters.
Okay, are there questions for Mark? Mark, I have one question. The pool supervisor position, will that be something that we'll be budgeting then as part of the general fund, knowing that it's really still a nominal amount, or will there be a different funding mechanism for that additional staff?
Community ed. Community ed.
It'll be funded out of the fees that are raised through community education?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Did I miss anybody's reports? All right. We will now adjourn to closed session if there is a board member who would be willing to make a motion reading the language.
I'll do this one. Madam Chair, adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.85, parent 10A, to deliberate concerning a grievance hearing, paragraph B and F, to consider disciplinary data and personnel problems with specific employees, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon any person referred to in such data. Paragraph C, to consider compensation for support employees, school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, specific coordinators, supervisors, and specific administrators. And E, to prepare for negotiations with the WCA Hudson Teachers Union.
Okay, motion by Brian, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn, roll call vote.
Bell, aye.
Robson, aye.
Holland, aye.
Van Loon and I.
German, aye.
Kaiser shot aye.
We are adjourned to closed session. Thank you.